Hi, and welcome to our virtual Justice on the Block informational clinic, which we will be discussing evictions today. My name is Charlotte Waters, Communications Manager for Legal Services in North Florida. With me today is Alex Richmond, Staff Attorney at Legal Services in North Florida, along with Colleen Mullen, Director of Pro Bono Volunteer Engagement, also at Legal Services. And our special co-host today with us is Tallahassee Commissioner Jack Porter. Today we are going to review questions we received and if possible answer additional questions. So let's dive right into the questions that were submitted. Jack, would you like to review the first question?
Yes, thank you, Charlotte, and thank you all for having me on. So the first question that we received, I'm 2 months behind in rent, but lost my job because of COVID. I tried talking to my landlord, but they told me I have to be out ASAP. Do I have any options?
So yeah, you do actually have some options right now. The fact that you mentioned that you lost your job due to COVID, that signals to me that you would likely meet the eligibility requirements as a qualified tenant under the CDC eviction moratorium. There is still a current eviction moratorium, which is a freezing of evictions through January 31st, 2021, though it isn't automatic. But anyone who's been unable to pay their rent and is facing an eviction during the pandemic may qualify for the Centers for Disease Control's federal eviction moratorium by signing and submitting a CDC declaration to their landlord. So remember, when everyone signs that CDC declaration, they are still required to stay up to date on rent, and any valid late fees listed in their lease agreements apply as well. However, the CDC has ordered that all individuals have signed and submitted a valid CDC declaration shall not be evicted from their homes through January 31st, 2021. And because the CDC declaration is a signed document under penalty of perjury, you need to make sure that you read it closely to make sure that you meet the 5 requirements that are listed in the declaration. And a really quick overview of those is that there's an income requirement, meaning that you've made less than $99,000 a year, or you received a stimulus check from the government. There's a financial impact requirement, meaning that you've had a substantial loss of wages or a loss of employment, or you've experienced extraordinary medical expenses during the pandemic. There's a best efforts requirement that obligates you to make the best efforts that you can to obtain government assistance for rental payments. There's additionally risk of homelessness requirement. So if you were evicted, you'd be risking homelessness, or you have to move into a close quarters congregate setting, like moving in with family or going to a shelter. And then additionally, you have to make sure to make timely partial payments on what your circumstances permit. So you have to make an effort to pay your rent when it's due, even just partial payments. But if you do meet those requirements as a qualified tenant, you do need to make sure to give a signed copy of the declaration to your landlord and keep a copy in case you need to prove that you delivered that copy to your landlord.
Oh, unmuting myself, so sorry. All right, thank you for that. And everyone who's watching, make sure that you, as he said, read those requirements. I think that it applies to a lot of us, which is really scary, but also good because we all need the help. Okay, so our next question is actually from a landlord who is struggling with their mortgage. And they asked, my tenant's month to month, not paying rent, rent paid since April 2020, lease expired September 30th, 2020. Can I enforce a notice to vacate?
So this is a very lawyer answer, and I'm very sorry for that, but it depends. Probably not. And it's entirely dependent on your circumstances. It's also entirely likely that a tenant would be protected under the eviction moratorium that Alex just talked about. Either way, a landlord has to follow proper eviction procedures with the court system in order to take possession of a rental property. Alex could talk about those after the next question, but there are definite steps that you have to take in order to properly evict somebody.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. People are really suffering across the board. We're getting a lot of emails to our office, and that's the thing. I want people to know that it's homeowners, it's landlords, it's tenants who are all suffering. We get questions like, can my landlord turn the light off? I have to leave, but I lost my job because of COVID. They didn't get any I didn't get any paperwork. I just got my lights cut off. So what would you say, Alex, in a situation like that?
No, your landlord can't turn off your lights. So if your landlord is turning off your utilities, like in an effort to evict you, that's considered or could be considered a self-help eviction. Anything that is considered a self-help eviction would be a violation of the Florida statutes 83.67, which prohibits a landlord from taking actions to evict on their own. They have to follow the proper court procedures. But if they're, putting locks on the door, they're cutting off your lights, your water, they're moving your possessions from the dwelling, and they don't have that writ of possession, they can't do that. The landlord has to follow the proper eviction procedures with the court. And before I go into those, real quick, for this particular issue, if your utilities have been cut off, a next step that you might want to take if you can't work it out with the landlord is to go ahead and call the utility company and get the utilities set back up in your name. There is a fee with that, of course, but that's probably the quickest way to get it done. But real quick, the proper process, unless if you've surrendered or abandoned the property, a landlord has to file an eviction suit in the court. They have to give the tenant a written notice of lease termination or a written notice to vacate, like a 3-day notice for non-payment of rent. And they have to ask the tenant to leave by a certain date. They have to file that eviction. They have to file an eviction case in the court. If the tenant doesn't move out by that date, then they have to win the eviction case and get the final judgment from the judge. And then they have to get that 24-hour notice, that writ of possession issued from the court. It has to be posted, and then the sheriff can come out, and then you can get removed. But before that, they can't be changing your locks. They can't turn off your utilities or anything like that.
Okay, and so according to, in your experience, for people who have had that happen to them, was it easy for them to get their lights turned back on in Tallahassee, for example? I mean, what? Is it as easy as it sounds, just calling and paying a fee, or not?
For the most part, yeah. It should
Okay.
be fairly simple to get the utilities turned back on. You can just call the utility company and get it set up in your name. And from what I've seen, it's been pretty straightforward.
Okay. And does the city provide, is there any special reimbursement if it was, you were sort of, your lights were wrongfully turned off, or that fee you mentioned, or we don't really have that as a city?
I don't, off the top of my head, I'm not sure about a reimbursement, but if your landlord is continually violating, doing these prohibitive practices, attempting to do a self-help eviction, again, that is in violation of the Florida statutes. And then there's a process. We did a video on this before, so definitely go to our website to check it out. But the next steps on that would be, filing in like small claims court because you've been irreparably harmed by them, doing these self-help evictions, and there's a process for getting damages in that way.
Okay, awesome. And I'm glad you brought that up. There are other videos for those who are watching. There are other resources. And definitely, even if you might not be experiencing eviction, I do encourage you to check on your friends, check on your family, your colleagues, your coworkers. You might not even know who around you is suffering, and just to let them know that there are resources available, I think is a big help. So thank you, Alex. And the last question we have today, but definitely follow up with more questions, is this. I believe that I've been wrongfully evicted and have had to stay in motels and my family's homes. Is there anything I can do or any legal help for me now? Or what can I do moving forward to find a place to stay given my current situation? So the first question, the first part is really, if you've been evicted wrongfully and you didn't know that you had rights or that there was a process, what recourse is there for you?
So because this is going to depend so much on personal details of each particular person's situation and how the landlord went about evicting you, I'm uncomfortable giving too much of a broad response. I'd instead encourage anyone to go ahead and consult with an attorney and just ask them what they think, any possible help could be. It's such a dependent on fact situation. However, regarding the second question about moving forward, finding a place to stay, given everything that had happened, there is rental assistance. There is definitely financial assistance. we would encourage you first to contact your local 211, and that's literally you just pick up your phone and call 211. That will connect you with the resources here in Tallahassee, and they can give you information on financial rental assistance. We do have federal financial rental assistance that is coming down the line. It's $1.4 billion is coming to Florida. So there is going to be a lot more assistance available. There are for residents of Calhoun, Franklin, Gadsden, Gulf, Jefferson, Leon, Liberty, and McCullough counties. You can also call Capital Area Community Action Agency. We do also have places for other service areas, including in places like Bay County. They can go to Tri-County Community Council, and people in Escambia County, if they're watching from here, from there, they can look to Community Action Program Committee. So although there are some resources at this time, again, the federal government just passed legislation that has provided for future rental assistance programs, and so a lot more funding hopefully will be coming down the line in the next year. And then we would also always encourage people, if you think that, first of all, if you think that there's a possibility that you could be evicted if you can't pay your rent, start talking to your landlord as early and often as possible, just to try and negotiate with them. Maybe you pay your rent weekly rather than monthly. Maybe you make small payments now, whatever you can do, and then try and get the financial assistance to get you back up to date, things like that. So anything like that you can do, we would encourage you to do.
Yeah, thank you, Colleen, for bringing that up. And definitely, we're hoping that more help is on the way, and that folks will be able to get it to those who need it most as soon as possible. I know that the city of Tallahassee, and I know other cities as well, are working on special programs. So you can always feel free to reach out to them. I've gotten a lot of emails, as I said, and you can email me at jack.porter@talgov.com, but definitely do what you can to speak to your landlords, and there might be more help even than your landlord might not know about your situation. Definitely mediation, that kind of communication is the best place to start. Unfortunately, when there aren't too many options. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys all. Thank you, Alex and Colleen, for joining us from LSNF, and Commissioner Jack Porter for co-hosting with us today. Like Jack was saying, it is important to speak with your landlords when possible and avoid eviction where possible, since it can cause future issues with renting. So thank you guys again. We will be covering additional information around homeowners at another time, and so we look forward to seeing you again online. This video provides legal information and shouldn't be considered legal advice. And this video does not create an attorney-client relationship or substitute legal advice you've been given. You may have defenses that we haven't discussed here, so seeking out an attorney or legal help is always advisable. For more information about LSNF and other eviction housing material, go to lsnf.org or call 850-385-9007. Again, we have a great deal of information and videos on our housing website, which you can see on the screen. Thank you again for joining us today, and we'll see you again online.
Bye.